15th Messidor, 1st Fructidor, year 7, from the 4th of July to the 18th of August, 1799. The powers. The Turkish-Russian fleet attacked again the port of Ancona, but repulsed it from the shore. It continued without a rival to dominate the Adriatic. The victories of the Austrian Russians did not cease in Italy. Masters of Turin, they besieged the citadel. The Piedmontese artillery soldiers whom they had enrolled with our troops hastened by their insubordination the loss of that strong place. Suvorov had in the meantime advanced as far as to Trebia. After 3 days of the most obstinate bloody battles, he forced the columns to retire into Tuscany, where he was not long before he followed them. He took possession of Tuscany. Mantua itself capitulated. Our only compensation for so many reverses was the junction of the armies of MacDonald and Moreau, which reinforced, though too slowly, by some thousands of conscripts possessed in the Genoese states, a good defensive line. A new Russian army in the pay of England arrived at Prague. That increase of force might have proved fatal to us if the first misintelligence between Austria and Suvorov had not broken out, and if Massena had not opposed to all those attacks an impregnable barrier to the Allied republics. Our partisans diminished every day in Helvetia, encouraged by the success of the co-allies. The faction, discontented with the reforms which we had imposed, occupied itself with their revision. The numerous friends of the House of Orange no longer dissimulated their hopes. Troubles broke out in several parts of the Batavian Republic. The governments of that republic placed all its troops under the command of a French general, and Brune united thus all the means of defense. That unity of direction was still more necessary as the grand expedition prepared upon the British coasts appeared to threaten Holland. We had still at Rome and Naples some fortresses. The Republicans of Naples struggled for some days, but soon the terrible Cardinal Ruffo, the blood-stained precursor of an irritated master, came to exercise his fury in the beauteous Parthenope at the head of his bands of Calabrese brigands. Long will the memory be preserved of the revolutionary vengeance of the court of Sicily. The king returned in triumph in the English fleet and re-entered his capital in the midst of executions. 3. The armies. The junction of our 2 armies of Italy was scarcely completed when Schubert arrived to command them. Championnet placed himself upon the Alps at the head of a 3rd army. Moreau returned to the accustomed theater of his victories. Massena left him the army of the Danube and consecrated himself entirely to the army of Helvetia. The conscripts of whom we had decreed the raising repaired from every part of the frontiers. They replaced also, as rapidly as they could, the materials which the preceding administration had, without shame, caused to be sold at the most scandalously low prices. But that which is dissipated in a moment cannot, unfortunately, be replaced so quickly. The winds of Egypt for several months past had brought us only the sounds of victory, but as if everything at the same time conspired against us. The news from Egypt brought us the account of the raising of the siege of Saint-Jean d'Acre. Never was France more in need of union and firmness. Never did a new government take reins in the midst of so many perils. For the interior, we had made the revolution of the 30th Prairial to re-establish the union between the powers, so necessary in great dangers. In rejecting 3 directors before the time prescribed by the law, we hoped to gather the fruit of that new violation of constitutional order, yet scarcely, however, had some weeks elapsed. But we found ourselves in the same confusion. We had chosen 2 directors, Goyer and Moulin, private men without reproach, but public men without talent, and what was worse than all, who had no desire to second Sieyès, in whom we had placed our hopes of a better government. They partook, on the contrary, of the exaggerated opinion. Barras thus found himself between two factions equal in number, and his adhesion decided the majority. Sieyès was obliged to ally himself with him in spite of his repugnance. He consented to name Minister of the Police one of the creatures of Barras, the famous Fouché de Nantes. Fortunately, that ancient conventional who well knew the Jacobins thought it useful to his interest at that moment to combat them. He decided Barras to unite with Sieyès and Roger Ducos, but that majority depending upon a man like Barras did not prevent the Directory from being equally as weak as it was before the last crisis. The friends of the fallen government drew towards Barras, who was the last wreck of it. The two oppositions, as usual, united to overturn it, and it was disunited the day after the combat. The Constitutionals rallied round Sieyès, while the Jacobins, from the danger of the state, had returned to their customary exaltation and no longer saw the welfare of the country in the executive power so unfortunately regenerated. They saw it only in revolutionary expedients and in the concentration of all the political action in the bosom of the legislative body. They had for two of their directors, the Minister of War, Bernadotte, and the General Marbeau, Commandant of Paris. If we add to those two names, those are Giordano, Gouraud, and Lamarck, members of our council, the Jacobins could reckon in their ranks 5 of the best generals in the Republic.